Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine trying to measure something as fundamental as access to clean drinking water and sanitation around the world.
Yeah,
It sounds straightforward, right? Just track percentages, see if they go up or down, maybe draw a line through the data points.
seems simple enough.
But what if that straightforward line is actually hiding a far more complex story? Maybe with surprising twists and turns that completely change how we understand progress.
That's precisely what we're diving into today. We're looking at some fascinating research that really asks us to look beyond the obvious, beyond that simple line.
Hmm.
Imagine for a moment that the global story of progress in clean water and sanitation isn't quite what we thought. Maybe there are some surprising detours and sudden sprints hiding in plain sight in the data.
We're taking a deep dive into a paper from the Science of the Total Environment. It's titled Tracking Progress Towards Global Drinking Water and Sanitation Targets, a within and among country analysis by James A. Fuller and his colleagues from 2016. And our mission for this deep dive is to see how looking beyond those simple trend lines can give us richer, more accurate insights into which countries are truly thriving, which are struggling, and maybe most importantly, why.
And what's truly compelling here, I think, is that while the world has made dramatic overall progress in water and sanitation access, and that's undeniable, this study reveals that the path to that progress, it's rarely a straight line.
Okay.
Understanding these curves, these individual country trajectories, is actually crucial for smarter future policy and, well, just more effective resource allocation.
Let's start with the big picture then, because the global progress has been genuinely impressive, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
From 1990 to 2012, global use of improved drinking water sources jumped from 76% to 89%. That's huge.
Massive gains.
And for improved sanitation, the numbers went from 45% to a solid 64% over that same period. Those are really big wins, reflecting millions of lives improved, a testament to significant global effort.
And a lot of this progress was guided by a critical global framework, the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs.
All right, the MDGs.
Specifically, Target 7C. It aimed to have, by 2015, the proportion of people without sustainable access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation, using 1990 as the baseline.
Oh,
This target really galvanized global efforts, gave everyone a clear finish line to aim for.
and to track this monumental task, the World Health Organization and UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program, the JMP, has been absolutely central.
Yes, the GMP data is key.
Historically, the JMP estimated countries' progress using what's called simple linear regression, essentially just drawing a straight line through the data points over time. On the surface, that sounds logical, right? Straightforward.
Does sound logical, I agree. But here's where it gets interesting. This linear approach, while simple and, practical for initial tracking, it can miss the full nuanced story.
How so?
Well, the paper highlights a growing recognition that progress often follows more of a sigmoidal pattern. You might visualize it as an S shape.
An S shape, like
Yeah.
a slow, fast, slow.
Exactly. Think of a typical growth curve. It starts slow, then there's a period of rapid acceleration, and finally, it slows down again as it approaches saturation, or, 100% coverage.
Ah, okay.
That's a very different dynamic from a steady straight line. And it has significant implications for how we understand and project progress. It could even lead to misjudgments about where a country is heading.
So this research takes a fresh, much deeper look then. They weren't content with just drawing straight lines.
Not at all. They used more flexible, nonlinear modeling techniques, specifically something called Generalized Additive Models, or GAMs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of being forced to assume a simple straight line, GAMs are these statistical tools that can sort of bend and curve to fit the true, more complex pattern in the data.
Okay, so they follow the data more closely.
Precisely. It makes them perfect for seeing those hidden trajectories that a straight line would completely miss. They applied this to countries with enough data points, I think it was 11 or more, and were able to classify country trajectories into 9 specific categories.
9 categories. Wow.
Indeed. And unpacking these different trajectories reveals some real aha moments about this nonlinearity. Now, sure, many countries still showed straightforward linear growth or decline or no change, or maybe they already had 100% coverage.
Right, the simple cases.
But the real insights come from those that didn't follow a straight path. Somewhere between 15% and 38% of countries, depending on which indicator you look at, showed these complex nonlinear patterns.
That's a significant chunk.
It really is. Imagine thinking a country is a slow starter, only to discover it's actually about to hit a rapid acceleration phase.
Or the opposite, thinking it's on track when it's really hitting a wall.
Exactly. That's the power of these nonlinear insights.
Yeah.
And maybe we can focus on the most impactful of these patterns they found.
Okay, yeah. So when they started bending those lines, letting the data speak, what surprising shapes did they uncover? What did the progress really look like?
Well, the first key pattern they identified is saturation. This happens when a country's coverage for, let's say, improved water sources starts getting close to 100%.
Makes sense it gets harder to reach the last few percent.
Exactly. The rate of progress naturally slows down because there are fewer and fewer people left to reach, the harder to reach populations, perhaps. For example, the reduction of open defecation, or looked at another way, the increase in access to sanitation in rural areas showed a strong saturation trend in many countries.
Okay, so it levels off at the top. What's the problem with using a straight line there?
The problem with linear models here, they tend to overestimate coverage in the early years, then underestimate it in the middle years, and crucially, they often predict that universal coverage is achieved years later than it actually is.
Ah, so they think the sprint continues long after the race is won.
Pretty much. It's like predicting you're still running hard when you've already crossed the finish line and are slowing down. Your linear model thinks you're still far off.
So the finish line isn't always where the straight line points. What about the other end of the curve? Countries just getting started, or maybe slowing down before they even get close to 100%.
Right. Then there's acceleration.
Mm.
This is really interesting. It's when a country starts making significant, sometimes really outstanding progress after a period of maybe little or no change.
Like finding a higher gear.
Exactly. It was the most common nonlinear pattern they found for piped water in rural areas, showed up in about 28% of countries analyzed. And it was also seen quite a bit in improved sanitation and general water access in rural areas too.
And how do linear models mess that up?
Here, the linear models often underestimate coverage in both the early and the late years of this acceleration phase. Sometimes they might overestimate it right in the middle, but they generally miss the scale of the upward curve. Imagine a rocket taking off. A simple linear model would totally miss that initial powerful thrust that suddenly propels it forward. They would underestimate its true potential trajectory.
That's a crucial distinction. So you might look at a country using a linear model and think it's lagging behind, but it's actually building momentum for a surge. This could mean we miss opportunities, right, to invest in a country just as it's about to really take off.
Exactly right. And then, well, there's the flip side of that. Deceleration.
Okay.
This is when progress slows down or even stalls before reaching a really high level of coverage. So not necessarily near 100%, it could happen much earlier. Rural improved sanitation showed this pattern in about 10.4% of the countries.
So hitting a plateau prematurely.
Kind of, yeah. If progress decelerates like this, linear models tend to overestimate coverage in the early and later years, but they underestimate it during that intermediate period before the slowdown really bites.
So you might think things are better than they are later on.
Or that the slowdown isn't as significant. They did also briefly mention negative acceleration and deceleration, basically getting worse faster or slower, but these were apparently very rare in the data.
Okay.
But the main point with deceleration is we might think a country is still on a steady path upwards when it's actually hit a significant obstacle or is running out of steam much earlier than a linear projection would suggest.
It's clear then. These different curves, saturation, acceleration, deceleration, they mean that a single number or just a simple straight line can totally misrepresent a country's real story.
Absolutely.
You could look at a country, apply a linear model, and think it's on track, but it's actually slowing down significantly. Or you might miss that it's about to accelerate. This could lead to some wildly misinformed policy decisions.
Definitely. Potentially wasting precious resources or, conversely, failing to support countries right when they need it most, or when investment could have the biggest impact.
You'd be flying blind, essentially.
Pretty much. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the study did find a statistically significant S-shaped pattern for all 8 indicators they looked at a global level.
So S-curve is kind of a general rule.
It seems to be, yeah.
Yeah.
It reinforces that idea of a general arc of development.
Yeah.
Slow initial gains, then a period of rapid improvements, then slowing again as coverage becomes near universal. It's a general truth for the world as a whole.
Okay,
But, and this is a huge but, the individual paths countries take are wildly different.
right. The study found massive heterogeneity among individual countries, didn't it?
Massive. Think of it like a marathon where everyone's theoretically on an S-shaped course elevation-wise, but some runners are sprinting way ahead of the expected pace for that part of the course, and others are lagging way behind, maybe tripping over obstacles unique to them.
So some countries were overachieving.
Yeah, the research classified about 26% of countries as overachieving. They were making faster progress than you'd expect, just given their current level of coverage, doing better than the average S-curve predicts at that point.
And the flip side.
Conversely, about 32% were underachieving, making less progress than they sort of should have been based on the global pattern.
Wow, that's almost a third falling behind the expected curve.
It is. And the key takeaway here is, not all progress is created equal. Some countries are really sprinting beyond expectations, others are falling short, perhaps despite seemingly strong starts earlier on. And this isn't just theoretical maths.
No, this is about real lives, real development, and real policy decisions impacting millions of people.
Exactly. And if we zoom in even further, these nonlinear methods are also vital for monitoring inequality within countries.
Ah, like the urban-rural divide.
Precisely. Take Vietnam, for example. Their data showed a pretty linear trajectory overall, but importantly, the inequality between urban and rural areas was consistently decreasing because rural access was growing faster. It was a steady, predictable closing of the gap.
Okay, a positive linear story there.
But then look at Chad. Their inequality was stable for years, a consistent gap. But then urban access continued to expand while rural access just stalled.
Yeah?
Dramatically.
Oh, wow.
A simple linear model, looking at the whole country, might completely miss this widening gap, or at least underestimate its severity. But a nonlinear analysis, like the GAMs they used, clearly highlights that sharp change in trajectory for rural areas versus urban.
It reveals the growing disparity that a straight line would just average out, essentially obscuring it, making us potentially blind to a critical widening gap.
It's a really powerful illustration of why understanding the dynamics matters so much. It's not just about the absolute numbers, but how those numbers are changing across different populations within a country.
That makes sense. Were there any overall trends in inequality?
Well, on a positive note, globally, those urban-rural disparities in improved drinking water sources did decrease quite impressively between 1990 and 2012. The gap went from about a 33.8 percentage point difference down to just 15.3 percentage points.
It's more than halved.
Yeah. And for improved sanitation, the gap also fell significantly, from 45.9 percentage points down to 30.8. Still a big gap, but moving in the right direction. So progress is being made on the equity front globally, which is definitely encouraging.
Okay, so it's intriguing that the big picture MDG assessment, whether the world met the target, didn't drastically change with these methods. They found high agreement, right? Like 95, 96%.
That's right. The overall global conclusion wasn't radically different.
But where this really shines, you're saying, where the true power of this nonlinear approach lies, is in tailoring solutions for individual countries.
Exactly. That's the key takeaway for policy.
So for the policymakers listening, how can these nuanced insights actually change their approach on the ground? How exactly can these patterns be used to make better decisions?
Well, it's all about developing tailored strategies, really moving beyond any kind of one-size-fits-all approach to aid or development planning.
Okay, give us an example.
For instance, consider countries that were maybe assessed as not on track to meet the MDG target using a simple linear model, but the nonlinear analysis shows they actually have an accelerating trajectory.
Like who?
Rural Nigeria for improved drinking water was one example mentioned. These are countries that are actually expected to perform better in the coming years. They're building momentum. Such nations might be excellent candidates for increased financial resources. Why? Because they're already showing they can effectively use what they have, and additional funding could potentially amplify their gains significantly. You're essentially investing in a country that's already proving it can sprint.
Okay, so back the winners, or at least the ones picking up speed. What about the opposite scenario? Countries that look like they're doing fine based on linear trends, but are actually slowing down.
That's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
A country might have technically met the MDG, but the nonlinear analysis reveals it's in a decelerating pattern.
Like rural India for drinking water, you mentioned.
That was the example given, yes.
Yeah.
These countries might need something different, maybe not just more money, but perhaps more focus on institutional capacity building or structural support to help them manage resources effectively in the long run, to avoid backsliding or stagnation. It suggests the bottleneck isn't necessarily a lack of funds, but could be more complex challenges, maybe maintaining existing infrastructure, ensuring good governance, or needing technical help to shift to more advanced, perhaps more resource-intensive solutions like pipe networks or treatment plants.
That distinction, needing more funds versus needing better management or technical support, seems absolutely critical.
It really is.
It avoids just throwing money at problems that money alone won't solve, and instead helps direct resources, whether financial or technical, where they will truly make an impact. It's about being smarter, not just spending more.
Absolutely. And these patterns, acceleration or deceleration, they have underlying causes, right?
Yeah.
Deceleration could mean a country is making progress, but shifting to more complex, resource-intensive investments, like building large-scale sewerage systems, which naturally slows down the rate of basic access expansion. That's not necessarily bad,
Or it could be bad.
or it could signal mismanagement, poor maintenance, or political obstacles, indicating a need for improved governance or institutional reforms.
And acceleration.
Acceleration, on the other hand, might mean that past investments are finally kicking in and paying off, or maybe there's just a really enabling policy environment where resources are being used effectively. Figuring out why a country is on a particular trajectory is crucial for effective resource allocation and designing targeted interventions. We need to address the right problem.
Makes perfect sense. But there's a practical challenge here, isn't there? You mentioned needing more data points per country to reliably detect these nonlinear patterns compared to simple linear models.
Yes, that's a key constraint. These more sophisticated models need more data to work effectively, ideally a good time series for each country.
Is that happening?
Well, the good news is that the JMP dataset is rapidly expanding. They're adding hundreds of new data points from surveys and censuses every year, so the ability to do this kind of analysis should improve over time.
That's good.
But it will become even more critical as we look towards the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, for 2030.
How so?
The SDGs introduce new, potentially more complex targets and indicators. Think about safely managed water, not just improved sources. Tracking these will likely renew the challenge of data scarcity, at least in the short term, as countries start collecting and reporting on these new, more demanding metrics. It's kind of a constant race to get enough good data to understand the real picture.
So wrapping this up, what does this all really mean for us? Our deep dive today shows that measuring progress in something as vital as water and sanitation access isn't just about drawing a straight line on a graph.
Not at all. It's about recognizing the unique, often quite curvy journey that each country takes. Some sprint, some stumble, some plateau.
And understanding these diverse trajectories, whether they're accelerating, decelerating, or hitting saturation, provides a much more powerful roadmap for policymakers.
Yeah, it helps them allocate resources more effectively. It allows for distinguishing between countries that genuinely need more financial investment to capitalize on momentum and those that might primarily need institutional support, technical help, or policy reforms to sustain their progress or overcome specific bottlenecks.
It's really about being smarter and more strategic with our global aid and development efforts, tailoring the approach.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that the real world, well, it rarely follows a perfectly straight line, and our methods for understanding it probably shouldn't either.
Okay, a final provocative thought then for you, our listener. Given these complex and varied paths that countries take in development, how can we ensure our data collection and analysis methods are always evolving? How do we make sure they truly reflect the nuances of human progress, rather than just simplifying it, maybe even dangerously oversimplifying it?
And what does this kind of thinking, looking beyond the linear, mean for any global development goal you care about? Whether it's education, poverty reduction, climate action, how might nonlinear dynamics be shaping those stories too?